Our first clip is from a show where they spoke to a caller from Long Island, New York. I think you're going to find it pretty interesting.
So to be clear, if you were to learn, for example, that there was historical evidence that demonstrated that the Jewish people were never slaves in Egypt, would that shift what you believe about that story in the Bible?
Historically, what I understand, since I predicted that the pyramids were the original Garden of Eden structures left, I think they were just basically slaves taking care of cleaning and not lifting tons of boulders. That don't seem possible.
Okay, so you believe that the pyramids in Egypt are the original Garden of Eden structures?
Yes, I believe they are.
Why?
Yeah, no shit, why?
I don't know how much asking why is really going to be helpful with this guy. Might be a little too far gone, but you know, Jamie's a patient guy, so.
Yeah, no kidding. And to tell you the truth, the rest of the call, you don't really get a good answer to why, but like, this is actually, while it's really funny, and like, guys, I'm not saying it was Eden.
But it was Eden.
One of the things that really turned me off about religion was noticing, so like I grew up as a Mormon, and every Mormon had a different version of what it means to be Mormon. While they still have this one collective religion, at the level of the individual, it's all so subjective. And so I kind of came to this point where I was like, okay, maybe everybody's wrong. And then I thought about my life and my religion and everything I had learned through the filter of what if everyone's wrong and I was an atheist, or I at least wasn't a Mormon or a Christian anymore at that point.
Yeah, Matt Dillahunty told me last week that, yeah, there's kind of an individual definition of God or a particular religion in every conversation with a believer. So if you go down that rabbit hole in a conversation as far as defining a certain God or a certain religion, a lot of the time you're not going to be that productive.
Right, right. Yeah, it's so much less than the concept of, is any one religion true? At this point, it's, is any one person right? Because I don't think you could find two people who agree on every fact, with the exception of those people who are like, I've decided this person is in charge of my religious life, and whatever they say, I will accept as gospel. That'd be the closest you get.
Yeah, so the best way to do religion is to be in a cult. You heard it first time here on Talk Heathen. Yep,
I did it. It was fun. Speaking of cults, Drew, I'm curious, what do you see as the distinction between religion and cults?
Well, there's a lot of different definitions of cult, and I've talked about this on my channel before, but largely I define a cult as it's a religious movement, but it has a lot of factors or a lot of features that focus on controlling its adherents as much as possible.
Right. Yeah, and so mine also would include like a distinct religious figure who, even though they might say isn't worshipped, they're worshipped. So Mormonism, for example, has their prophet, and it comes back to Joseph Smith. It's funny though, because the lines are pretty blurry at some places. Like, is the Pope a cult figure or a religious figure? And they're just, the honest answer for me is there isn't a ton of difference, except for whether or not it's been accepted as mainstream. But one of the religions that I think ticks all the boxes of a cult, for me at least, is Islam, and that is the perfect setup for this next clip out of Pakistan. And the guy did use a pseudonym, Cool Fan. My guess is because it's not safe to be an atheist in Pakistan. So here we go.
I'm guessing you were not Christian? What religion did you come out of?
Muslim, out of Islam.
So what was it that brought you out? I mean, what started that? What started you questioning?
What brought me out? Hey, here's what brought me out. Okay, the fact that if it is so important, right, the hell and the heavens are so important that anybody and everybody should worship God, any God, right? If it is so important, the heaven and hell is so, why the God isn't here to tell me that? Why their salesmen are here to tell me that?
Well, they speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't it? Where is God to tell me all that? I mean, he wants me to worship 5 times a day. And, you know, He never even bothered to show up once a week, right? Once a year. Forget
once a millennia.
Yeah. Why a book with different versions?
Yeah. You know, I don't know. I'm a very ardent reader of history, so I don't know if you are aware of that Quran that they found in Sana'a, which is like the oldest Quran that was ever found in history. Yeah, you should look it up. It's called Sana'a Quran, right? Okay.
Is it different?
It's a Quran that was radically different.
Really?
Different. It's like you are not gonna believe how
That's
different.
awesome.
The meanings are completely different, and everything is completely different. And it comes to me is that, you know, what the fuck are we talking about? You know, seriously. On one hand, we're talking about a prophet who somehow found some sort of creature who flew up into the sky and meet prophet and all that. And on the other hand, he's talking about, you know, knowing everything is closer to your juggernaut. When I really do need him, he's nowhere to be found. What the fuck, man? You know, it's just ridiculous, seriously. The whole idea of God is just absurd. It's just fantasy. It's just stories. And if it is really that important, it all boils down to that same thing, isn't it? If it is really that important, I don't need a salesman. I don't need someone to tell me what is right from wrong. You know, I'm capable of my own decisions. I don't need to tell me that if I say the prophet was a fucking idiot, you don't say that or I'm gonna burn in hell. So fuck you.
You know, I'm actually not so afraid of the hell part. I'm afraid of the being in a place where the government might take action.
Yeah.
I think I would. But you, sir, have some brass balls, and I applaud you for it.
That's a compliment.
Thanks, man.
Stay awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep asking, and as long as you feel comfortable, keep talking about it.
Yeah.
Because
thanks, man.
If you can be.
Yeah.
If you can.
Well, first of all, yeah, Eric is totally right. I mean, you have to have some serious guts to be able to stand against Islam in Pakistan. I mean, I've heard people like Majid Nawaz, who's a Muslim reformer, talk about how, yeah, in Pakistan, you can be put to death for being a Muslim, but largely the people that you're in danger from are actually the people, not just the government. I mean, the people may rise up and mob rule will rule there. So the fact that this guy, I mean, even just using a pseudonym, calling into the show is incredibly brave, and ex-Muslims in the Middle East and South Asia are just heroes to me.
Yeah, the other thing is, so again, kind of taken away. Again, cool fan, seems like an awesome dude. Definitely takes a lot of balls to something I know from coming from like a deeply indoctrinated religious place is it takes a lot of balls to even start having doubts, because people start to detect those doubts and become hostile toward you. And so that he's made his all the way out and just with the what the fuck. I love the way he says what the fuck. But the other problem I see here is, so he was talking about this other Quran, and to tell you the truth, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not saying, I'm not at all casting doubt on it. I am not familiar with that story at all. In fact, real quick, are you, Drew? Do you know what he's talking about?
No, I hadn't heard of that. I mean, I know that there are some documents that conflict with the Quran that are of similar origin, but I don't know about the specific instance he's talking about.
Gotcha. So I just want to, for the sake of argument, I want to grant it that it's true. And maybe it isn't, and maybe I'm an idiot for doing that. But if it is true, it kind of once again shows that level of like, I ask the question to people all the time, if you're wrong about your religion, what could convince you? And apparently, presuming this is true, even finding a Quran that is radically different and in direct conflict with your present day beliefs, that is older than yours, apparently that's still not it. Like, apologetics for any religion will always catch up and come up with a reason why this really doesn't have to bother us. Though maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not catching up anymore. Maybe that's why the religious nuns are one of the fastest growing groups in America. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's totally right when he calls these apologists and religious people salesmen. Because, yeah, that's what they end up being at the end of the day. And what do salesmen do? No matter what you say against them, their goal is to sell you the product. And a lot of the time, the devotion is exactly the same for apologists in really any religion.
I think it was Hitchens who said that if he met God, the first thing he would say or ask is, why did you spend so much time and effort into concealing your existence from me? And it's not as though... It would be one thing if you could actually do Pascal's wager. For example, if there was this one God and he's the one story and he's like, look, if you just pretend you think I might exist, I'll let you into heaven. But it's not just that. Not that that would do it for me. Without empirical evidence, I still wouldn't believe. But it is the case that it's not just like, oh, the real test is whether or not you believe, despite all of the evidence not to believe. It's whether or not you believe, and then commit your whole life and start giving money and start treating people a certain way and start behaving a certain way. Like, if it is that dire and I need to do that much, even if you still showed up and was like, hey, I'm God, look, water into wine, and no one has a small penis anymore. Like that would be enough evidence of a miraculous God, extremely miraculous in my case, and and there'd still be faith stuff left, like that he is there for the reasons he says he is, and all of that. It's the consequences of not believing are so dire that if you don't have a good reason, I'm not gonna. Yeah,
I mean, apparently God cares so much, like Cool Fan said. God cares so much about all of this stuff, and it cares how you respond to him. You know, he wants you to pray 5 times a day, and a lot of different practices in Islam make the Hajj and everything, and yet he won't show up once a week, he won't show up once a year or century or millennium or whatever. And I mean, he hasn't actually made the effort to convince the majority of the people in the entire world that Islam is true, and yet he expects devotion from everyone in the world. It's really nonsensical.
Come on, God, just show up in this video behind one of us. There's not a lot of space behind me, but wouldn't that just be amazing? We might be able to beat like Justin Bieber out for the most viewed video on YouTube.